All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Jason London. I am lead faculty with our Endurance Athlete Division, meaning that I teach the Professional Bike Fit course, Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner live, and then now, starting this upcoming Tuesday on the 2nd, Rehabilitation of the Injured Runner online. So our first cohort is starting on the 2nd. It did sell out, but we do have a second cohort starting on May 4th. So get over there and sign up if you're interested in learning more about runners. Well, today what I wanted to talk about was telehealth considerations for the endurance athlete. Now, I know that, a lot of us were probably scrambling last spring to get our telehealth game up and running amidst COVID, and probably got pretty adept at using telehealth last spring, maybe part of the summer. But now, as we are slowly climbing out of the pandemic, at least it seems at the time being, I think a lot of us are starting to see patients coming back into the clinic, and we're starting to, not use telehealth as much, and maybe even are considering just only doing in-person visits going forward. And I would really encourage you to not do that. And what we use at Excel, where I work in Montana, is a blended version. So I do think it's an extremely important tool and can reach a lot more people and just be a great benefit to the existing patients that you do have. So I'd urge you to continue keeping up with your telehealth practice, and talk about today particularly with endurance athletes. So, with endurance athletes, there's a lot of factors going into why they got their injury in the first place, but a lot of those factors can be addressed very well via telehealth. So I like to kind of think of those as the low-hanging fruit. So we can really do a lot of education on just overall general well-being with talking about sleep, certainly talking about nutrition, and then with our endurance athletes is, of course, extremely important to talk about training load and load management, because the majority of endurance athletes who develop an overuse injury, one of those factors, and probably a main factor in the development of that overuse injury, is a training error, meaning that likely they increase their volume too quickly, too soon. So we can spend time with them going over their training plan and what they've done prior to that injury developing, and see where that error came about. So in general, we're going to probably be talking about volume more than intensity with the majority of these injuries. And with that, going forward with trying to plan that load management, we can utilize mainly kind of two different approaches to this. There's kind of the long-standing approach of using the 10% rule, which means that an athlete is not going to progress their volume by more than 10% per week. So if they are, let's say, running 20 miles this week, and their training schedule calls for them to increase their total volume by 25 miles next week, that would potentially be an issue. So that would be increasing their running volume by 5 miles, which is over 10% of 20. So a safer bet and a better bet would be increasing their volume by 2 miles, which would be that 10%. A more, maybe a more specific approach or nuanced approach could be using that acute to chronic workload ratio that does involve bringing in intensity. So therefore having the runner, again using runner as an example, but this can go for any endurance athlete, be it Nordic skier or cyclist. But with this runner, thinking of having them looking at their training schedule, if they're training properly, all of their runs are not going to be at the same pace. They're going to be modifying that pace with, again, the majority of the runs being kind of a slower, long duration at an easy pace, but then also having some higher intensity runs too. So by using the acute to chronic workload ratio, you can factor in intensity plus the time that they spent doing that training and get their workload for that training event, and then add all of those training events over the course of the week to get their workload for the week, and then looking at their training plan and looking at the average workload that they're doing over 4 weeks, and then comparing each week to that. So, for example, if they're, let's say that just for real simplicity, their average workload was 10 over 4 weeks, and we're looking at each week, we don't want to see their workload fall below 0.8 for a given week or above 1.5 for a given week. So basically dividing the workload for a week versus the average of 4 weeks, and then that's going to give you your acute to chronic workload ratio, where there's been a lot of research looking at that and what kind of is the safe zone, so to speak, for maximizing training stimulus so that the athlete gets better and develops that capacity to do the event or the sport, as well as not get injured. So, with endurance athletes, all of that can be done easily over telehealth and giving them that education. Now, I know a lot of us probably working with endurance athletes, have been giving that information and helping them with that information via email in the past. That's a great thing to do from a customer service perspective, and just a nice thing to do as a person, but that's really non-billable time. And so, and really in my mind too, that's probably not going to be the most effective way to be working with that patient is just via email and not being able to bill for it, as well as not having that discussion where, as life gets busy, your time is precious. You want to kind of maximize your time with the patient, and that isn't over email. That's going to be utilizing telehealth. If they just need a check-in and they don't necessarily need to come into the office, and you could work with them on their training plan, coordinating with their coach, or work on them with other issues as well. So I really urge you to not just kind of do a lot with your patients over email. If you can't, respond to it with just a few sentences and, in the span of what you're responding with, just a minute or two, you should really urge them to set up a telehealth appointment where you can then address their question more effectively with that. Especially if they're having new little things come up, it's far easier to have them point to where their issue is and maybe do a movement screen with that. Going forward on the horizon, there's a great platform coming up especially with looking at runners and being able to look at their running mechanics remotely, Movement Solutions, where the runner would upload their video. It's really good. There's a really good way for them to do that. And then through AI, it's going to be analyzed, and then you're going to get the data, and then you can then go ahead and coach the runner with some running drills based on that data, on that running analysis. Otherwise, using a blended model works really well, getting that patient to come into the clinic if it's appropriate and doing the running eval there. I've talked about, with cyclists in previous podcast, particularly those cyclists that, have a home stationary bike or spin bike. That is usually very easy for them to make adjustments to. And so you can watch them while they're on their trainer and then have them make adjustments easily without them having to bring in the whole stationary bike or smart trainer into your clinic. Doesn't work as well with a regular bike. That's where you're still going to want them to get into the clinic. So anyways, just a quick tidbit there on working with endurance athletes via telehealth. I think it's a great mode to work with them, particularly with those kind of low-hanging fruits, as I like to say, working on sleep education, and definitely working on education on training load and load management. So either utilizing that 10% rule for progressing volume, or if you want to get more specific, utilizing that acute to chronic workload ratio. So have a great Friday, everyone. Get outside, do something fun, and I will see you later.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.